Welcome back. Now we're going to be doing lesson number 23. So let's begin. Et haaretz, the land, asher, which Adonai Elohechem, which the Lord your God, noten is giving lechem to you, v'yorashtem, and you shall inherit ota it, v'yeshavtem ba, and dwell in it. Alright, now let's break apart these things and let's examine the sentence and let's see what's going on here. Alright, one thing we have to understand with regard to the sentence structure here is we notice that here it starts by saying et asher, that which that which Lord your God noten lechem, gave to you. Okay? So why is it we don't see the sentence written differently? Why doesn't it say Adonai Elohechem, the Lord your God, noten lechem, gave to you, et haaretz, the land which, okay, et haaretz, the land, okay? We have to see the fact that when we're looking at the structure of the sentence here, we see the fact that et haaretz is placed in front. Normally when we think of sentences, we think of the verb being placed in the front, and then we see the action of what the verb is referring to. We see the direct object, we start seeing these things. But in Hebrew, we have to understand that we don't necessarily need to put a specific sentence order. So what we need to understand is, why is et haaretz placed in front? This is in order to create emphasis. So here, this wants me to understand that the emphasis is the land in this sentence. That's why we see the order in the structure. Because he could have said, right here, Adonai Elohechem, the Lord your God, noten lechem, is giving to you et haaretz, the land. V'yorashtem, and you shall inherit ota it, v'yeshavtem ba, and you shall dwell in it. Okay? It could easily have said that, but it doesn't. We see the fact that et haaretz is placed first in the sentence. So the emphasis is not God giving the land. The emphasis is the land which God is giving. So it wants to change the order of the subject here to point out the importance of what he is referring to when he talks about haaretz. We read, for example, in the last passage, we noticed that when God talks about the land, he says that it belonged to Hakanani, that it was their land, okay? And he talks about the mountains of the the Amorites, right? And here we find that this land is being transferred in ownership. And this transfer of ownership is because God is taking the ownership away from the Amori, the Canaanite, and he's giving it to Am Yisrael. Okay? So this is why we're seeing this structure here. So et, we know, is the definite direct object marker, right? Remember, has no translational value. It only tells me that it is a direct object marker that points to the object in the sentence. Which means, like I said, I'd have to go back and find what is the verb. That's why when I go here, I see that the verb happens to be out of order in comparison to its original position of which it's used. So here, we see here that first let's go here. We see the hey, which is the direct object marker. It's the definite article. So the definite article, which knows the fact that we're making a noun definite, so the land. Here's my relative pronoun. What is a relative pronoun? Which. Okay? Remember, we don't write the name of God, so for Elohechem, we say Elokechem. We write a kaf instead. We two the double yuds. And this is to protect the fact that we're not writing God's name. Okay? So here would be the Lord. Here's the Lord. Okay? And then over here, we have the signification that this is plural. So the word Elohim is the actual word, which we see Elohim always ends with a yud and a mem. Okay? When you put it into when you add a pronoun, a possessive pronoun to it, remember we have to delete the mem, and we have to turn this into tzarei, so it's a, so that's why you see the word k here, chem, your. Notice the fact that God is never used in any way, shape, or form with relationship to God as a plural entity, okay? He is a singular entity. Even though the word Elohim is plural, it's referred to as a single entity. We see that when we look at, for example, Bereshit bara. Bara is created in a third person masculine singular form, where the word Elohim is a plural, so it's being rejected as being looked at as a plural, but only an individual, single individual God. Okay, so Adonai is God, and He's a single individual. He says yours, so this is your in the fact of plural. Okay, this is not a singular your, this is a plural your. And this is something that you'll see that with relationship to English, when you're translating, English loses all of its understanding in the pronouns because of the differentiation that doesn't exist in relationship to plural and singular second persons. And we see this commonly pointing up over and over again. Just like we see nouns when they're plural versus singular, a lot of times the same aspect is not actually, doesn't come out so much at times. So here we see this is your plural, okay? So the land which the Lord your God noten. Remember we said, what are we learning with regard to noten? We're saying that with relationship with the verb, the common pa'al state in the present tense is the OA form. So we're going to see the OA like you have here, no ten, OA, okay? And so we're going to have the tzarei down here, we're going to have the holem on top, and we see the fact this is the present tense. So here we're going to put in brackets is, because we're dealing with the fact of a present tense verb, which obviously in Hebrew there is no present tense verb of existence. We have to assume that by placing it in. Is giving. So this is a present state. And then we have lachem. What is lachem? This is to you. It is a contrast of the preposition lamed plus the pronoun chem. So we have two, and then we have the word you. Alright? Now, something important to note with relationship to it is the fact that, remember I said to you that there's only two forms by which we're going to be seeing in Biblical Hebrew. One is El, and the other is Lamed. Okay? So whenever we see El and Lamed, we're seeing that there's something that's going on here, because El is only used with verbs of action, which deals with movement and verbs of speech. Okay? Noten is one of the verbs of movement. So in reality, the lamed being used here is defective. It's not correct. It's not grammatically correct. It should have said noten elechem. And of course, if you look at the proper chart of it in the preposition chart, which you can go to my website, you'll find the preposition for el. It's elechem. Alright? And here, we would have seen this if this was written correctly. So Moshe purposely said that he didn't write it this way for a reason, so we have to figure that out. But here, noten elechem, it says, is giving to you. And then we have the next part of our verb is v'yarashtem. Now notice, you'll see with yarashtem, it's something's wrong here. What is that? Well, here, normally we would think it as being like this. Yarashtem. Okay? We would see the shwa here underneath the yud. We'd see the patak vowel underneath the resh, and of course, tem, which is you plural. So, here we find that this is not how we find it. We find it where it's a kamatz, and we find that there's no vowel under the yud, but we see it under the vav. So here, let's first identify the vav. The vav here is a vav reversive. Okay, so that means, or the question is, the vav reversive, right? So that means that the vav is changing the past into a future. And so we know that with the vav reversive, so we're going to identify this as the vav reversive, that this means that I'm going to have to translate this in the future tense rather than in the past tense. We know it's past because if I look here, my pronoun is at the end, tem. Okay? Now back to the actual vowelization here. If you noticed that it wasn't vowelized with the shwa, the batak, and of course this having a shwa like this. Why is this? The answer is, when you're dealing with a shwa, you cannot have two shwas back to back like we see here, okay? Which means you can't go vo, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't make sense, okay? So we delete the shwa and we make a chirik underneath the vav. That's why we're doing, that's why it says ve, vi, yarashtim, okay? And of course the sound was just changed into a kamatz, even though the kamatz and patach are predominantly the same vowel sound for the most part. So here we have, if we take away here our pronoun, we're left with the root yud, resh, shin, which is the word yarash, which means to inherit. Okay? So here it's, and you shall inherit. Okay? And who is the you? Remember, the you is plural. So you got to understand the context once again, that this is regarding the plural context. And then here we have the word ota. What is ota? Ota is just et. And et is what? That's the direct, the definite direct object marker. And with it, you have attached to it a feminine pronoun. Okay? And so we have basically et plus hey. And so when we put it together, we get ota. Okay? And you'll see that when you go to the actual noun chart, which deals with the plurals, you're going to see et, the direct object marker, which is used with the actual pronoun endings at the end of it. Notice, you have to just remember, et is not the same as eat. You always have to remember that. Whenever you say eat, you know that you're dealing with a preposition. When you're dealing with ot, you're always dealing with the direct object marker. Okay? So here the direct object marker is saying it. And it, we're going to put on the sideline. You're reminding yourself this is feminine. So why is it feminine? The answer is very simple. It is referring to the word haaretz. Haaretz, this here is the object, alright? And so it's replacing it by not repeating the word haaretz, so it's saying ota. So here it's important to understand this, that we're looking for a noun by which we need to identify. Just understand the masculine or feminine form. Go back and search in the sentence to figure out which one was feminine, and then you can see there is the actual meaning of what was being spoken of. You can understand why this had to be put in the feminine form. Okay? Now we go over here, the Yeshaftim. Once again, boom, we have here the Vav reversive, which leaves us with Yeshaftim. We take away Tem. We know that this is the pronoun ending. So this is the pronoun that's attached to our past tense verb. And what we have left is Yud, Shin, Bet, Yeshav, which means to dwell. Okay? So we know this means to dwell in this passage here. So we've translated, and you shall dwell. Alright? And you shall dwell. And then we get to this next part, and this is the inseparable preposition. Okay? This is where we're looking for the meanings. How could this mean? Well, we have to think about the meanings for but. But can mean against, it could mean among, it could be in, it could be at, it could be on. And of course here it means on. And once again, we have another situation here. Okay? So here we know this is the inseparable preposition. Okay, so the inseparable preposition means on. But here we have the hey. And what's the hey? The hey, if we go through our prepositional chart, we'll see that ba would mean on it. So on it. And what is it? Once again, it is feminine. So we know that the ba in this passage here means on it. So therefore, this is the same thing that's connected to the ota, which goes back and reconnects us to haaretz. Okay? So he's referring to, as we see, the land. Okay? So et haaretz is the land that they will dwell on it, and it's the land that they will inherit. Alright? So these are just things you were going to have to, keep pressing forward and looking at and breaking apart so we can grammatically see the things that are necessary. I can't stress enough of how important it is to memorize your verb charts. They're the most important things to memorize, except also the chart that deals with nouns and the pronoun endings that are connected to it. Because they're the most difficult things to actually identify at times. Because when you're looking at a noun, you have to remember, what this is, the endings, and what it would be attached to, and what does it look like. But if you get those nouns down and you get them kind of quick, you can identify them. And that's the whole point of what we're doing here by helping you learn Hebrew, is you're learning how to break apart a word. And you're learning how to make this word come out and be understood in relationship to what the function is. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? Is it a preposition? And that's basically the main function. What we're doing is we're ripping apart these things to see what these are. Some of these you will see the charts. They have to have their own private chart because it's an irregular verb, and some of these things we find are charts that we're going to have to keep going back to. I suggest if you want to use any chart that you should have on hand, I would think the noun chart, the preposition chart should be one of the two main charts that you flip back and forth over to get really comfortable with knowing what these are and how they look and what you're going to be seeing with relationship to it. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time as we go to lesson number 24 as we learn more of Biblical Hebrew in the upcoming lessons. We'll see you next time.